Yo, what is going on, guys? It is TrainerOblivio checking back in. I've got another Scarlet and Violet video. Today, we're going to be discussing another one of the several topics that I've broken down in videos so that you guys can use on your journey. Today's topic is going to be breeding. All right, guys, as I mentioned before, this is going to be breeding. So, first and foremost, I just want to get a couple of things out of the way. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for once again blowing up my second tutorial video. Um, you guys are awesome. I mean, it's insane. You guys can see it's been doing amazing. I'll put the link in the card right now. It's if you guys want to check that out, I will have a playlist including all of these tutorial videos that I'm making. So please feel free to check them out. And thank you guys so much. That's incredible. I'm honestly truly humbled. And then second thing, I actually discovered something really cool doing the research for this video that I haven't seen a whole lot of coverage over. So please stick around to the end where I will reveal what that is. So first things first, what I want to do is go ahead and get you guys set up and prepared, ready for success with breeding. So in order to do that, we are going to need a list of items. So what we need is actually going to be on screen right now. I definitely recommend that you go out of your way and get these items before you do any sort of breeding, competitive breeding, or just breeding in general for your Pokemon. I will explain as the video goes on why you need these items and more importantly how they are put into effect. So for starters, let's go ahead and start off with the Destiny Knot. The Destiny Knot will pass on a guaranteed of, I believe, 5 IVs from the parent Pokemon over into the new Pokemon, so the new offspring. That means that if you find a Pokemon such as my Baby Maker that I designate my Destiny Knot to, my Baby Maker is a Ditto that I found in a raid, and one of the things that I'll also recommend that you do, find a Ditto from a raid, right? Dittos are incredibly great for breeding. I will show you guys on the map right now where you can find Dittos in the wild, but I heavily recommend that instead of searching for a Ditto in the wild, just go to the Poke Portal, go ahead and look up, try to just reset till you get a Ditto, and then go ahead and catch that preferably 6-star or 5-star Ditto, so that they have a lot of good IVs. So speaking of which, we will go into details about what all of those things mean, but let's get back to the items. So my Baby Maker, as you can see, has really incredible stats. It has best being obviously the most proficient, perfect health, perfect attack, perfect defense, perfect speed, and perfect special attack. The only thing it's lacking a little bit on is special defense, but still a great parent Pokemon because they can pass all of those things onto the offspring. And that's what the Destiny Knot does. The Everstone I have designated over here. This Ditto is more or less for my Trick Room teams. Since it has a decent speed IV, I don't want them to be too fast. So I leave this one to the side. This is kind of my breeding box, how I set it up. It makes sense for me. I can explain it to you guys if you'd like, but let's keep it short and simple for this video as it will be pretty lengthy. The Everstone is the second item that I definitely recommend you guys have. Everstones, what they do is they will make sure that they pass on the nature of the parent Pokemon that you hold on. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and move the Everstone to this Scyther. Now, this Scyther is a Japanese Scyther. We'll get into that in a moment. But for all intents and purposes for the items, this Scyther, if I wanted to pass down that quirky nature that it has, which not really, but just for the example, we're going to go ahead and slap it on there and pass down that quirky nature. Now, that is the top 2 most recommended items that I have. A third item that I definitely recommend that you pick up is the Mirror Herb. When we discuss breeding in Gen 9, we have to discuss the changes that have happened since Gen 8, since Sword and Shield. What's changed, what's different, what those mechanics play into, and how they will affect your breeding. So, let's go ahead and get started with some of the basics. So the basics for breeding are as follows, right? And I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. It can get very complex. I will have down and beneath in my description a bunch of links that you guys can use to basically kind of follow along and make sure that you're doing everything as you need. Because like I said, those mechanics can get really dicey, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. So with breeding, you take 2 parent Pokemon that are compatible. And what we mean with compatible is that they belong to the same egg group in order for them to breed, or one of the parents is Ditto, right? As Ditto can breed with every Pokemon, almost every Pokemon, excluding legends, mythicals, things of that nature. But two parent Pokemon that exist within the same egg group should produce an offspring. Very basic, right? I'm going to go ahead and put the egg group chart on screen right now. I hope that this shows all of the egg groups, and I can fit it all in editing. But the gist of it is that these are the egg groups, and you want to make sure that mom and dad, or parent and parent, right, are in that same egg group. So, for example, if you were breeding one Pokemon that's in the field egg group, such as Arcanine, you want to make sure that there's also the second parent is in the field egg group so that they can breed, right? Otherwise, they will not produce an egg. Now that we have discussed egg groups and compatibility, we're going to go ahead and talk about the parent Pokemon specifically. So, there is a reasoning for the parents, right? So there is attributes that are thrown to each parent specifically. They have changed over the course of the years since Gen 2 drastically. However, some things still remain true. Some of those things are going to be things such as the female Pokemon, right? Or the mother Pokemon is going to be what determines what the offspring is going to be. So, what I mean by that is, for example, if I have a female Arcanine that is breeding with a male Raticate, I will produce Growlithe offspring, if that makes sense. The Raticate being the dad does not determine the species of the Pokemon, but the female Arcanine being the mother does determine that species. Now, we are going to focus a little bit more on the mother because I will have to say it is a little biased, and the mothers are the ones that kind of bring the most to the table when it comes to breeding Pokemon. So, what I mean by that is not only do they determine the species, they have a much higher rate of passing down hidden abilities to their offspring. I believe 60% for the mother and 20% for the father. And then when you combine both hidden ability parents, mom and dad, I think it adds it up to about an 80% chance for the offspring to have the hidden ability. But all in all, the mom determines a lot of things. The dad used to determine the moves that the offspring would learn, and that was kind of the dad's role in breeding. But that has since been fixed because there's a lot of single species Pokemon or single gendered Pokemon. Not to trigger anything, that's just how Pokemon goes, right? Such as Kangaskhan that is only female, or there are only male Pokemon as well. And of course, in those situations, in order to pass on moves, they would have to come from either one, respectively. Now, if you're still with me, this means that you have to put a lot of focus on the mother Pokemon. With Ditto, you don't have to put as much focus, but when you do need a specific offspring with a specific moveset and such, you do want to give or maybe a specific ability, such as its hidden ability, we will have to put a little bit of focus on there. I believe now that we're speaking of hidden abilities, it's the perfect segue to talk about baby moves and hidden abilities. So with baby moves, in order for your offspring to inherit the moves from its parent, it does need to have, they do need to be on the parent Pokemon. So what I mean by that is, for example, Gardevoir has a baby move, Shadow Sneak, and it can pass the move Shadow Sneak down to its offspring Ralts. However, it belongs to the amorphous baby group, and so do several ghost Pokemon. That is how it can use the move Shadow Sneak and pass it down when it breeds with one of those. So if a female Gardevoir wants a Ralts offspring that has Shadow Sneak, it will have to find a male ghost father Pokemon that has the move Shadow Sneak in order for Shadow Sneak to be passed down to the offspring. The beautiful thing about passing on baby moves, however, is once the offspring already has it, you can then chain breed the offspring to produce more of those. It's not like you have to breed the same two Pokemon every time. A good example would be, let's say that the father of the parent Pokemon is a Gengar with Shadow Sneak. The mother is a Gardevoir, a female Gardevoir. When they produce an egg, they produce a Ralts baby or offspring that has Shadow Sneak. Now you can take this Ralts and evolve it or whatever, and you can breed it, chain breed it with, say, a High IV Ditto, and then you can produce High IV Pokemon with the baby move Shadow Sneak and other baby moves. Baby moves did get a buff in this generation, and we're going to go ahead and discuss that right now. So the reason that I told you guys to get the mirror herb, tying out all the items that I was talking about before, is because of the buff that was given to baby moves in this generation. That was kind of the old frame of how to get baby moves onto a Pokemon. You needed to have a parent that would pass it down. But now the new thing, right, which I will show you guys in a moment. I'll prove it to you guys and put it into effect with these two Pokemon that I have set aside. My Murkrow and this Misdreavus. This Murkrow and this Misdreavus are not in the same egg group. However, I can still get the baby move with the item Mirror Herb. I will show you guys and discuss more about it when we get to it. I'll tie back to it at the end. Just hold on and wait for me, okay? In the meantime, however, we are going to focus on traditional breeding. So, I'm going to kind of lump the traditional breeding and Masuda method breeding together, because really everything that applies to traditional breeding also applies to, or sorry, everything that applies to Masuda method breeding applies to normal breeding, if that makes sense. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start breeding my Ditto with this Japanese Scyther, just to see if maybe on a whim I can get a shiny, right? If for those who don't know what the Masuda method is, I will have a link for the Masuda method down below that describes exactly what it is. The watered down version is that Junichi Masuda, one of the composers and directors for the Pokemon Company for several years, discovered a method, I believe back in Gen 3, for breeding shiny Pokemon. And what he had discovered was that when two Pokemon from different regions in the world, in the real world. So, for example, my Ditto Baby Maker is from the States. He's from the U.S. region because I reside in the U.S. However, this this Scyther, I traded from the Japanese region. So it existed in Japan and it is now in my game, my console, right? When two Pokemon, Ditto from the US, Scyther from Japan, mate and produce offspring, they have an increased chance of producing a shiny Pokemon or a shiny egg. Once again, that is just a watered down version. It gets a little bit more complicated than that, but more or less that's basically what it is. This being said, in order for you to abuse the Masuda method, you definitely would want a Pokemon from a different region. The most beneficial Pokemon to have is a Japanese Ditto, or a Ditto rather, from a different region than the one that you are in, right? Because then you could always mate something with Ditto and you always have that chance of getting a shiny. But in this case, we're just going to mate the Japanese Ditto. We're going to go ahead then and we're going to discuss the old method of breeding. So before, whenever you used to breed Pokemon, you would just go to a daycare center, deposit the Pokemon, run around back and forth and made sure that you would, check in on the daycare center or the daycare people every so often, just so that they give you an egg. And usually there was like a visual cue. They would stand in a different location or fold their arms in the newer versions of the games, things like that. In this game, you don't have that, and there is no daycare center. However, you are the daycare center. You became the Pokemon breeder, right? So what happens now is that the picnic not only doubles for a lot of things, and it has a lot of cool gimmicks that we're going to discuss in future tutorial videos. But for this one, we're going to focus on two specifically: the new breeding mechanics and the sandwich that we need for breeding. So what you do in order to breed Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet now is you make sure that on your party, right? So you don't deposit it to a daycare or anything. On your party, on your physical party, you need to have the two compatible Pokemon. In my case, it is my Ditto and my Scyther. In anybody else's case, it could be any kind of other Pokemon. This means that in your party of 6, if you want to breed something specifically, you definitely want to take out the other Pokemon from your party. So if you have a full team, you want to empty out or deposit your team and only leave the 2 that you want to breed, right? This will make sure that you're breeding specifically for whatever you want. If not, I haven't really tested it myself, but if not, another cool thing would then just to be have all of them in the party with like a single Ditto, and Ditto might even potentially be able to breed with everybody in the party. But for this video, we're going to focus on specifically one Pokemon. I have already slapped my Destiny Knot onto the Ditto, and I have already given the Everstone to the Scyther, which means they should be ready to breed. So how do you do that in this game? Do you run around? Do you just, act all crazy? No. So in this game, what's changed from before, which a lot of people have had some complaints about, is that breeding is now a time-based event. So what does that mean? Before, you were able to hop on your bike or your ride Pokemon or whatever the case may be and just run back and forth, and after a set amount of time, or steps rather, because babies used to take a set amount of steps, egg steps, in order to produce an egg, right? And egg steps, they varied between Pokemon. Pseudo legendary Pokemon had like the highest step counter, and then like regular Pokemon like the starters and stuff had less. And then, like Route 1 Pokemon had the smallest baby steps so they could produce eggs constantly. But that's kind of all changed in this game. You don't need to run around. There's no steps, to be honest with you, that you need to breach in order to produce an egg. So in this game, you just check this basket and you look to see if there's an egg inside. This happens after a set amount of time. Now, breeding being a time-based thing, it has its pros, it has its cons. For me, I love it. It's great because while I edit or record or work or I'm doing anything else in the real world, right? Anything that involves my time and effort, I can just set this up in the background and let Ditto and whatever Pokemon do its thing, and after a while, I'll produce a lot of eggs. So another cool thing, another pro that I'll say about this is that you don't need to individually pick up every egg like you would from the daycare center. You can stockpile eggs, which is great. It's a great thing to do, especially if you're trying to shiny hunt, especially if you're trying to chain breed, especially if you're trying to get a specific ability or something, because you're going to produce a big amount of eggs, which gives you a bigger chance of getting all of those things. However, to the contrary, being that it is a time-based thing, you do have to kind of, and I'll say kind of, right, allocate some time to doing so. So for me, I can set it up in the background while I work or whatever, but I still have to have it up in the background, right? And another thing too, with sandwich powers, you only get a window of 30 minutes. And as I'm about to show you with the egg sandwich, you're only going to get about 30 minutes to do so. In order for you to go ahead and maximize those 30 minutes, you definitely have to pay attention a little bit and make sure that you're checking every so often, just to make sure that you've got what you need. Segueing perfectly into the sandwiches, however, I did do a lot of research and I produced many recipes on creative mode and everything just to see if I could get an egg power level 3. If you guys found something that maybe I overlooked, please leave it in the comment section below. I definitely appreciate you talking to you guys over there. However, I was not able to find a better sandwich than the Great Marmalade Sandwich. It has an egg power of level 2, and it produces a great amount of eggs. I want to say that in that 30-minute period, it'll produce well over 2 boxes, so 60 eggs. Well over 60 eggs, which is a lot of eggs. Not only is this a great sandwich because it's egg level power 2, right? It's a great sandwich because it only requires 3 simple ingredients. 3 simple ingredients that I'm pretty sure you can get very early on in the game. You don't really need a whole lot of them. You only need 1 cheese, 1 marmalade, and 1 butter, and you get that high egg power, right? And then you can just set it up really quickly. It's a super duper easy setup sandwich because the marmalade and the butter go on the bread already. And then all you have to do is take your 3 slices, right? 3 slices of cheese and just put them on the bread and then slap the bread on top and you're good to go, right? After you've done this, you will receive the egg power level 2. The egg power level 2 will last for 30 minutes as all of the boosts in the game do. When you're trying to get shiny power or anything like that, it only lasts about 30 minutes. I'll show you guys where the timer is too, so you can keep track of how long that egg power lasts. Now, with normal breeding, typically what I would do anyways in Sword and Shield is I would go ahead and pick up the eggs that I needed. And then once I've picked up the eggs that I needed, I would go ahead and, and run around a bit and make sure that I was picking up more eggs and hatching and picking up more eggs and hatching. Sometimes it would be just individually, like I would run around, hatch, pick up an egg, run around, hatch, pick up an egg, because that's usually how it would go. I'm going to show you guys the timer. So if you hit right on your D-pad on your remote, you will actually see the active meal power. And the meal power that we have right now is egg power 2, raid power rock, and item power poison. Really, I don't care about the other 2 meal powers. What we're focused on is that egg power. Now, I only did that so I could show you guys the timer, but you don't want to back out. You definitely want to stay in the picnic because, as I said before, it is a time-based event. In my research, I have done the following. I will take back Koraidon only because I feel like he's in the way, right? And then I'll do something like a small activity such as, washing your Pokemon or even playing soccer with them. Just something small to pass the time. And once you do that, there's not like you don't have to wait too much more after that to get an egg. Now I do want to show you guys that it will take you. So as you just seen right there, that was almost immediate. After I set up the picnic and set up the sandwich and I gave Scyther a bath, they already produced an egg. So they already produced 1 egg. After this 30-minute timer is done, we're going to revisit and I will show you just how many eggs are produced in that 30-minute timer. And I will say this before we leave off. You do need to make sure that you maximize this time. So what I recommend you do, stay here for the 30 minutes, right? So it sucks. Trust me, I get it. Because now breeding becomes a task where you kind of have to allocate 30 minutes and just sit there and not do anything in the game for 30 minutes. And it kind of sucks because you're kind of stuck there. But if you are breeding or chain breeding for something, believe me, it's worth it. It's more than worth it. Because typically when you're breeding for something, it'll take you more than 30 minutes anyways, just to produce the eggs, it's not really that big of a deal in retrospect. Another cool thing about the meal powers is if you're offline and you do have to go for whatever reason and you can't sit around, you can put your Switch in sleep mode and that timer won't drop. So it's not like you'll waste it. Let's say you have to leave the house and go for something. If you put your Switch on sleep mode, when you come back, that meal power will still be there and you can still use it to actively sit here and wait for the eggs to be produced. Now, we're going to go ahead and just check one more time. Look, so you see what I'm saying? It stockpiles eggs. So I got 1 egg, 2 eggs, 3 eggs, 4 eggs, 4 eggs. I have 5 eggs in total from just the maybe 60 seconds I sat here and explained that to you guys. So believe me, they produce eggs really quickly. Let me come back after these. I probably won't wait the 30 minutes. I'll come back after maybe 10 minutes or so, and I will definitely show you guys how many eggs have been produced in that time. Give me 1 sec. While we wait for eggs, I did just want to go over one thing that I mentioned earlier really quickly. IVs. So what IVs stand for are inherited values. I will once again put links down below so that you guys can understand this more fully from their explanation. However, what inherited values are the values that you receive for a stat such as HP, attack, defense, special defense, and speed. What you inherit from the parent Pokemon. So for example, my Ditto has a best stat in attack. The Scyther has a best stat in attack. So in theory, with the Destiny Knot, the offspring that they produce will also have a best stat in attack. Now, my hope is that the offspring receives 6 perfect IVs, which I actually have already done. I actually already have a Scyther produced from these two, the Scyther and the Ditto, that has 6 perfect IVs. I put them on a competitive team already. But if not, getting something with 5 perfect IVs or even 4, where you only need 1 or 2 bottle caps to fix things, and just getting the best yield of inherited values as possible. The best way to do this is a little method called chain breeding. So chain breeding, for example, let's say that you started off with a really good Ditto, right? 5 perfect IVs in my case, almost 6. But then you got a really bad other parent Pokemon, right? So their IVs are terrible. They have like no good in almost everything. What you would have to do in that instance is breed them up until you get the best offspring from a so let's say you breed 5 eggs, and out of those 5 they're all mid, they're not really that great, but one of them has like 3 perfect IVs, right? One of them actually got 3 perfect IVs from their parents. So then what you do is you take that 3 perfect IV Pokemon and chain breed it with the Ditto or the 5 perfect IV Pokemon, because now you went from passing on 5 and nothing from the parents to passing on 5 and 3, and then you breed those until you get 4 or something, right? 4 or 5, and now you have 2 parent Pokemon that are really good, that can produce a really good offspring. That is the idea behind chain breeding. Basically breeding until you get a really good offspring, and then breeding that really good offspring again to pass down those stats again. So hey guys, I'm just back and I'm showing you guys that the timer's about halfway done. I'm not fully focused as I am at work. That's life. But I am showing you guys that within that, basically halfway through the timer, look at how many eggs were produced. I have about half a box here. So 5, 10, 15, 16, 20 eggs. 20 eggs in just barely half that time. Like barely half of that time. I'm not going to go ahead and show you guys how I hatch these eggs. Just to make sure that we get everything done correctly. So I'm going to be putting the Scyther back. You obviously have to keep 1 Pokemon on you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to maximize the efficiency by grabbing all these eggs, 5 of them rather, and hatching those at a time. So efficiency is the name of the game here with breeding and shiny hunting, because you are on that timer. So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing the most you can. Now the reason I'm over here is because Los Platos seems to be the easiest place, for me anyways, to breed Pokemon or to hatch Pokemon. Before, in other games, you would have needed a Flame Body or Magma Armored Pokemon to reduce the amount of steps you needed to half of them, so that it would only take you half the amount of time to hatch a specific egg, right? But in this game, that mechanic didn't pass down. So even if you do have a Flame Body or Magma Armored Pokemon, they don't help with the breeding process. They don't reduce the amount of steps. But I'm going to show you guys right now, just as I'm speaking to you, how quickly really it takes to hatch those 5 Pokemon. It doesn't really take a whole lot of time, and the reason that I like Los Platos is because it's kind of a circuit. It just goes around in a circle. So it's kind of like this semi-sphere that goes around, or semicircle rather, that kind of goes around, right? So you kind of just cut across and then you go up around, and then you cut across and you go up around. And you do this maybe a couple of times. I'd say like a good 5 to 6 circles or half circles around this town, and you're already hatching eggs. Just for reference, Scyther is a slow growth rate Pokemon that does have a higher egg counter or egg steps. So hatching Scyther eggs isn't as easy as it would be, let's say, a Rattata or a Yungoos that's in this game, or a Lechonk or something of that nature. But I'm glad that I picked this Pokemon because, it's going to showcase really well here how long it really does take. So I didn't really count how many circles those were, but we're already hatching our first egg, and I've barely been talking for maybe a good minute or so. So it really, in retrospect, if you kind of, put it into perspective, what we've been doing here, all in all, it hasn't taken me about, maybe, I waited 10 minutes just to produce a lot of eggs, but if you're just trying to breed like one of something, between the breeding, the sandwich, and the hatching, you're going to take less than 5 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes at most. If you are breeding for a lot of things, this is definitely the way to go. You want to be efficient. You don't want to do what I'm doing and stop halfway through the timer. You want to let that timer run all the way, run its course, so you can yield the most amount of eggs possible. And then after you get the most amount of eggs, just go forward and go ahead and hatch as many as you can, right? Until you get what you're desiring. Whether that be desired IVs or a shiny or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to hatch these real quick for you guys and show you. And then after I show you this, I do want to show you guys something really cool. We're going to finally round out the video and tie back. And I'm going to show you guys this mechanic that I kept from you involving the Mirror Herb. And I'm also going to give you guys a cool discovery that I made. So believe me, it was worth it sticking around to the end. I'm actually going to go ahead and put on my glasses because this is now Professor Oblivio time. Let's go ahead and hatch this last egg, and then I'm going to cut right back to showing you guys what I was talking about. All right, I do thank you guys for joining me. We are now at the very end of my video, and we're going to round out by making this Murkrow that I'm going to put on a team the focal point. So, two really quick things. First things first, we're going to go ahead and go to my bag and discuss what we have been talking about earlier. Grab the mirror herb item that we were talking about and put it on the Murkrow. Now, let me go ahead and explain why. Before, I was talking about the two parent Pokemon need to have the same egg group and moves in order to pass it down to the offspring. Not in this gen. It actually got a buff courtesy of the mirror herb. Now what the mirror herb does is if any Pokemon, whether it be in the same egg group, same whatever or not, same gender, it doesn't matter, whether this Pokemon has the move that you need and you attach the mirror herb to the Pokemon that doesn't have it, it'll copy it, right? Mirror herb, it'll copy it and pass it over to this Pokemon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna check my I'm actually going to put this on a competitive team. This Murkrow, I only have 3 moves on it. I have to empty out 1 slot. How you can do that is if you change moves, it'll give you the option to remember, forget, or use TMs. You want to forget something to erase it and have an empty slot. So you do need an empty slot and the mirror herb. After I've done that, I now have this Misdreavus with the move Perish Song. And the move Perish Song, I want to pass over to my Murkrow. This is what we're going to do. So now we're going to open up the picnic as if it were the daycare center and as if there were 2 parent Pokemon that I'm trying to pass on a move to. Obviously, they're not compatible, so they're not going to be able to breed with one another. Thanks, courtesy to Mike, he was able to give me a Misdreavus because it's a Violet exclusive. Not only that, but a shiny one, which is really cool. I'm going to quickly pass the time by washing this Misdreavus and, just making sure that it passes just an itty bitty amount of time, and I kind of just did like an activity here. Obviously, I can't check the basket because they're not going to produce anything, but let me go ahead and come back here, right? And then let's check on my Murkrow. When I check on my Murkrow, it should have Perish Song, and there it is right there. I was successfully able to pass on Perish Song from the Misdreavus to my Murkrow. Couple of noteworthy things to know about this setup. If the parent Pokemon, or I guess in this case the 2 Pokemon that are here, if they do have 1 or more moves that can be passed down and you're trying to pass on one specific one, get rid of everything else. So just make sure that if, for example, in this example, I only needed Perish Song, so I got rid of any other baby move that Misdreavus was able to pass on to my Murkrow, such as Confuse Ray and things of that nature, so that way only only Perish Song got passed on, right? Now, the second thing and the reason that I put on my glasses, right, so that I could be Professor Oblivio, is I haven't seen anything about this, and this is making me really, really happy. It has made me super excited. This Murkrow, right, as I mentioned before, let me go ahead and as I explain, I'm going to start putting some things away. This Murkrow, originally, I didn't have any plans for it. So it really kind of was just sitting there, but then I kind of started taking a look at something, and I've seen Perish Song and Prankster, and my evil brain started twisting, right? But before then, I needed to have Prankster. The only issue is that the only Murkrow that I had was this Murkrow right here. And so I was going to breed it, but I was like, nah, I'm just going to shiny hunt something. So then I used a shiny sandwich and I started to shiny hunt Murkrow. And after about 10 minutes, I did go ahead and find a shiny Murkrow. Anyways, that's all extraneous. It's all miscellaneous. It literally is neither here nor there. The focus of what I'm about to tell you is actually groundbreaking. It's actually really cool. If you guys do remember, back in Sword and Shield, when we first got the ability patch and the and being able to hyper train Pokemon and all that other good stuff, or at least how it was back then, ability patches. This is what we're going to focus on. When I found the shiny Murkrow, it was a regular Murkrow in the overworld, so it had Insomnia as its ability. It didn't have the hidden ability Prankster. As you can see on screen, the 3 abilities for Murkrow are Super Luck, Insomnia, and Prankster. I had insomnia. So I gave it an ability patch in order to change this specific Murkrow's ability to Prankster. Now, if you remember the Sword and Shield days, when you did that, you weren't able to pass on the hidden ability like that to Offspring. But guess what I discovered through this video, through the research of this video? I bred this Murkrow that was not originally a Prankster Murkrow, and it produced like 5 other Prankster Murkrows. It produced this whole line of Prankster Murkrows. So guys, that is groundbreaking stuff. Now, hidden abilities can be passed down via ability patch, which means you can hidden ability patch your starters, other rare Pokemon that have rare hidden abilities, and then chain breed them so you can get shiny hidden ability Offspring or 5IV hidden ability Offspring. That stuff is just awesome to me. And I thought I'd go ahead and share that bit of information and nerd out with you guys. And I thought that would be a great note to end on. I really do appreciate you guys for coming through. As always, you have been amazing. I have been Trainer Oblivio, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Trainer Oblivio, checking out.